I wondered about this question last time I was in Switzerland riding with Stella, a Summerboard sponsored rider. And that being, do you prefer riding with the Freeboard or a Summerboard? And at the time, she kind of refused to give an answer, saying that to some extent the question was stupid. But nonetheless, that is the question that I'm going to try and answer today. Both Freeboards and Summerboards are a kind of specialised skateboard with 6 wheels that are meant to replicate the structure of a snowboard. Summerboards are electric and Freeboards aren't. And in the last couple of years, we've gone from being a total beginner to actually being sponsored by both companies. We've ridden everything from the Freeboard G3 to the Freeboard 5 and even the precision-made otherboard parts, and likewise we've ridden all kinds of Summerboard products from the SBX all the way up to the new SBX2. And so although this question is definitely very subjective, I hope that this video can be informative if you're looking to get into one of these sports. Now, other than the price, the main difference between these two kinds of boards is going to be the type of riding that you'll do with them. Where the Summerboard is mostly oriented around flat ground spinning tricks on any kind of terrain, the Freeboard is better oriented for downhill and freestyle tricks. That said, there are a lot of flat ground spinning tricks to learn on the Freeboard and Summerboard, which is why although I wouldn't do freestyle on the Summerboard, I still use it basically every day. And if, like most people, you're going to ride this board by yourself, the Summerboard has a huge advantage that you really can just pick it up and go, ride it for well over an hour and have a really good session of practice. This also makes it slightly more accessible for hanging around with other friends who don't Freeboard or Summerboard, because the Summerboard can easily keep up with most other means of transport, making it a very interesting type of e-skate because you can still use it to travel around with your friends, but in the meantime you can do tricks along the way. And you know, I like Freeboards as much as the next guy, but there is no denying just how good it is to pick up the board and get well over an hour of riding in the middle of the city. It is so sick. Of course, if you do live near mountains and other Freeboard riders, then you can do carpools to the top of hills and ride them down, which is effectively a completely different thing. Riding a Freeboard in the mountains is almost incomparable to riding a Summerboard in the city. And so if this is the kind of place that you do live, then the Summerboard is going to provide you with way more riding time. But yeah, there is nothing quite like gliding on a Freeboard along the road in the middle of the mountains. But there is actually an advantage to freeboarding in the city, and that is just how much better it is for freestyle than the Summerboard. I'm just not convinced that the Summerboard would work very well for freestyle, and I have tried it, but every time I find that I just end up going back to the Freeboard. I use the Summerboard more as a means of transport and as a way to seriously practice particular weight distribution tricks on the Freeboard, and then just use the Freeboard for freestyle. The Summerboard's great for kind of isolating a particular kind of trick. For example, I've been trying these heel side overslides, which I'd personally never seen anyone do on the Freeboard before, but it definitely seemed possible. It's just that most people tend to do it toe side because it's more natural. The Summerboard just makes it easier to learn a lot of tricks. If you're drifting too much and slowing down too much, you can just accelerate. And overall, it has just been a game changer in terms of how much progress I've made with the Freeboard training on the Summerboard. Another thing to consider if you're interested in picking up either of these boards is the amount of maintenance required. I recently had a problem with the SBX and one of the wires coming disconnected from the switch and had to buy a soldering iron to solder it back together. And although for sure if I'd bought the board I would have been very disappointed to have to do this, it wasn't even half as difficult as I thought it would be. Let's see. Nothing. Hey! It actually genuinely wasn't that bad. The Summerboard does also need more maintenance than the Freeboard because it's a far more complicated machine, and so this should definitely be a factor to consider before you go out and buy one. But that said, I did actually quite enjoy doing this. Doing the maintenance on the Summerboard was actually quite enjoyable, and learning to solder was as well, just like it was to buy and learn how to use a power drill when trying to test loads of different Freeboard casters. No matter which of these boards you pick up, you will have to do some kind of routine maintenance. The edge wheels on either of these boards will need to be replaced, especially if you ride it a lot downhill. If you do freestyle on the Freeboard, you are definitely going to break base plates. Just like on the Summerboard, if you ride it a lot, you'll eventually have to replace the belt drive. If the idea of doing maintenance puts you off buying either of these boards, or perhaps you just don't have any experience doing this kind of maintenance, I would say it's actually way easier than you might expect. So you know, don't let that put you off. These are insanely fun, and the idea of even getting close to snowboarding on roads is pretty mental. So do I prefer to ride the Freeboard or the Summerboard? In the city, probably the Summerboard, but obviously in the mountains, then definitely the Freeboard. And of course, when it comes to the skate park, I'd prefer the Freeboard. Again, this is just my opinion, and I would honestly love to hear what you have to say about this, especially if you have both boards, which board you prefer for each different thing. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.